The server room hummed with mechanical breathing 47 racks of processors, keeping Sterling Industries alive while Chicago slept outside. Marcus Cole's hands moved through the maze of cables with the certainty of a surgeon, each connection precisely where his memory said it should be. The diagnostic screen cast blue light across his dark skin numbers, scrolling faster than most people could read. He read them. He always had. 2:47 a.m. The timestamp burned in the corner of his vision. System failure cascading through the backup protocols. $3 million of data hovering on the edge of permanent loss. Nobody else in the building. Nobody else who could stop it. His phone buzzed against his hip. Marcus ignored it, fingers already entering the emergency override sequence he'd designed 4 years ago when this system was built. When he'd been senior infrastructure engineer Marcus Cole, the man who understood these machines better than the people who manufactured them. Before everything changed. Before Sarah. 2:51 a.m. The cascade slowed. Marcus rerouted power through the secondary grid, isolating the corrupted sectors. Sweat tracked down his temple despite the climate-controlled cool. 4 minutes to save what would take months to rebuild. His daughter's school reminder glowed on the phone screen when he finally checked it. Parent-teacher conference. 3:30 p.m. today. Ella. Everything always came back to Ella. 2:58 a.m. Emergency protocol initiated. The servers began their automated recovery sequence, purging damaged files, restoring from clean backups. Marcus watched the progress bars climb, each percentage point, representing hours of someone's work, months of company operations, millions in contract obligations. All of it saved, all of it invisible. 3:02 a.m. Backup systems fully online. Crisis averted. The monitoring panel showed green across every metric. Perfect function. Seamless operation. No one would ever know how close they'd come. Marcus logged the incident in the maintenance system. Power fluctuation resolved. Systems stable. 8 words to describe 4 hours of work. 8 words no executive would ever read. He gathered his tools, checked each connection one final time, and headed for the exit. The night security guard sat behind his desk, eyes on his phone, not looking up as Marcus passed. Invisible. The way he'd been for 3 years, the way he would be tomorrow and the day after and every day, until something broke badly enough that they had to acknowledge him. And even then, they probably wouldn't. The February cold hit Marcus like a slap when he stepped outside. The Chicago wind cut through his work jacket, carrying the smell of snow that hadn't fallen yet. He'd finish by 6, sleep 2 hours, pick up Ella. The math of survival calculated down to the minute. His car sat alone in the vast employee parking lot, a 12-year-old Honda that burned oil and needed new brakes. The kind of car that announced your economic status before you opened your mouth. Marcus slid behind the wheel and sat for a moment, letting the engine warm, letting his hands stop shaking from the adrenaline of another crisis solved. Another invisible save. Number 48 if he was counting. He was always counting. A black man in a corporate building at 3 in the morning. If I'm cleaning, they look through me. If I'm saving the company, they still look through me. Invisible, either way. The thought tasted like truth. The bitter kind. Victoria Hayes arrived at Sterling Industries at 6:15 a.m., exactly as she did every morning. The elevator to the executive floor recognized her keycard, the soft chime announcing her arrival to no one. She preferred it this way. Silence. Control. The city spreading out below her corner office like a kingdom she'd conquered through sheer refusal to be anything less than perfect. Her assistant had already left the morning briefing on her desk. Victoria scanned it while her coffee brewed the expensive kind that came from beans hand-picked in Colombia and cost more per pound than most people earned in a day. Systems running smoothly. Maintenance handled the overnight issue, the quarter's projections holding steady at 12% growth. She signed off on 3 requisitions, approved 2 vendor contracts, and deleted 40 emails before the coffee finished brewing. The overnight issue. Victoria paused on that line. What issue? When had it happened? Who had fixed it? The report contained no details, just the reassurance that everything was fine. She moved on. If it was handled, it didn't require her attention. That's what systems were for. That's what delegation meant, trusting the machinery to run without her constant supervision. The memory of her mother flickered through Victoria's mind, unwelcome but persistent. Eleanor Sterling, 20 years younger, sitting at their kitchen table with termination papers spread out like a death sentence. The corporate law firm that had used her up and thrown her away. The depression that followed settling over their house like permanent winter. Victoria had been 14. Old enough to understand that weakness got punished. Old enough to make a vow. Never be her. Never need anyone enough to break when they left. The coffee tasted perfect. The city looked beautiful. The numbers were good. Victoria pushed her mother back into the locked room in her memory where she kept everything that threatened to make her soft. Her phone buzzed. Robert Thornton asking to move their 9 o'clock meeting to 8:30. She confirmed. Robert was efficient, brilliant with numbers, the kind of CFO who made her job easier by handling the financial complexity while she focused on strategy. 2 years working together, and he'd never given her reason to doubt. Victoria pulled up the acquisition proposal they'd been developing. A smaller tech firm, struggling but with valuable patents. The board meeting was scheduled for next month. If they moved fast, they could absorb the assets, fold the talent into Sterling's infrastructure, and show another quarter of aggressive growth. The kind of move that kept shareholders happy and competitors nervous. She never thought about the people who'd lose their jobs in the acquisition. That wasn't her role. Her role was survival. Evolution. The weak companies got absorbed by the strong. Natural selection in a Brooks Brothers suit. The invitation to the charity gala arrived in her email. Alinea. Friday night. The kind of event where deals got made over wine that cost more than most people's mortgages. Victoria confirmed her attendance. These events were part of the machinery. You showed up, you networked, you reminded people that Sterling Industries was a player. That Victoria Hayes was someone who mattered. The morning moved forward with the precision she demanded. Conference calls, strategy sessions, budget reviews. By noon, she'd made 14 decisions that affected hundreds of people's lives, and she'd made them without hesitation. That's what leadership meant. Decisive action. No room for doubt. She never once wondered who had saved the company's data at 3 a.m, never once thought to ask. Oakland Elementary School released its students at 3:25 p.m. with the organized chaos of 700 children discovering freedom. Marcus stood with the other parents, mostly mothers, a few fathers, all of them checking phones or chatting while they waited. He recognized faces. Some nodded. Most didn't. Ella emerged at 3:28, her backpack bouncing braids coming loose from the careful arrangement Marcus had managed that morning. She spotted him, and her whole face transformed that smile that made every sacrifice worth it. She ran. Marcus caught her, lifting her despite the growing weight, despite his back that ached from too many hours bent over machinery. Her voice came out breathless with relief. "Daddy, you came?" She said this every day, every single day, like she expected him not to show, like she expected everyone to eventually disappear. Marcus set her down, smoothed her braids. "Of course I came, baby. I always come." The teacher, Mrs. Patterson, waved from the doorway. "Tomorrow's conference." Marcus waved back, already calculating how to leave work early without triggering another confrontation with management. Another request, another accommodation, another mark in the invisible file that labeled him difficult. They walked to the car, hand in hand. Ella talked about her day, the words tumbling over each other. Math test, she got 100. Reading time, they learned about butterflies. Art class, she made something special a surprise for later. Marcus listened to every word. Some fathers he knew tuned out this kind of chatter. Background noise. He'd seen them at pickup checking emails while their kids talked to the air. Marcus listened like Ella's words contained secrets. Because they did. In her voice he heard whether she'd been happy, whether anyone had been mean, whether the asthma had bothered her, whether she felt safe. Today, she sounded happy. Today was a good day. The apartment waited for them on the south side 4th floor of a building that had seen better decades. The elevator worked sometimes. Today wasn't one of those times. Marcus carried the groceries up 4 flights while Ella climbed ahead, humming something she'd learned in music class. Their home was small. 1 bedroom for Ella, the pull-out couch for Marcus. Kitchen the size of a closet. Living room that doubled as his office bedroom and thinking space. But it was clean, safe, the windows locked. The heat worked. After Sarah died, after the settlement money ran out after the demotion, this was what Marcus could afford. This was home. Ella dropped her backpack and pulled out the surprise. A drawing carefully coloured showing 2 figures. One tall, one small, both with the same brown skin, both smiling. The tall figure stood next to something that looked like a giant computer tools in his hands. She held it up, pride shining in her eyes. "It's you, Daddy, fixing the big computers, like you told me." Marcus's throat tightened. When had he told her? He tried to remember, then realized she'd overheard him talking to Rachel. Or maybe she'd woken during one of his nightmares, the ones where he was back in the server room, back when he had a title and a team and a future. Maybe she'd heard him talking in his sleep. He took the drawing, studied it with the seriousness it deserved. "This is beautiful, baby. We'll put it on the fridge." They cooked dinner together, spaghetti with sauce from a jar and a salad from the bag. Ella set the table while Marcus boiled water, both of them moving through the routine they'd perfected over 3 years of practice. Two people who'd lost the third part of their family, learning how to be whole again, or at least learning how to function. Over dinner, Ella asked the question she asked at least once a week. "Daddy, do you like your job?" Marcus had learned not to lie to her. Ella could spot dishonesty the way some people could spot perfect pitch, so he gave her the truth shaped for 7 years old. "I like that it lets me take care of you." Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "But do you like it?" The distinction mattered to her, the difference between doing something for obligation and doing it for joy. Already at 7 she understood this. Already she was wiser than most adults. Marcus chose his words carefully. "I used to love my job, before Mummy died. I was an engineer then. I designed systems, solved problems that nobody else could solve. That felt good." Ella's eyes went distant the way they did when she was accessing memories she shouldn't have to carry. And now he cleaned up other people's messes in the dark. Now he fixed systems he'd designed, watching other people take credit. Now he swallowed pride like medication, daily doses of humiliation that kept the health insurance active. He found a version she could handle. "Now I do important work that keeps the company running. It's different, but it matters." She seemed to accept this, went back to eating. But Marcus saw her file the answer away in whatever mental archive 7-year-olds kept. She was building a picture of her father piece by piece. He wanted that picture to include strength, integrity, love, not bitterness, not defeat. After dinner, after homework, after bath time came the part of the day Marcus treasured most. Bedtime. Just the two of them. The city noise fading outside Ella in her pajamas with the butterflies printed on them. Marcus sitting on the edge of her small bed. She picked the book tonight. Where the Wild Things Are. They'd read it 100 times, maybe more, but it never got old. Marcus did the voices, making her giggle, the sound bright enough to push back the darkness that always waited at the edges of his thoughts. When the story ended, when Max returned home to find his dinner waiting still hot, Ella nestled deeper into her pillow. But she wasn't done talking. Her voice came out small, vulnerable in the way it only did at night. "Daddy, tell me about when you were an engineer." Marcus had learned this was important, keeping the memory alive, letting her know he'd been something more than what he was now, building a foundation of belief that circumstances could change. He told her about designing the server infrastructure, about the team meetings where people listened to his ideas, about the day the system went live and everything worked perfectly because he'd built it right. He told her about respect, about being seen, about mattering. Ella listened with her eyes half closed, absorbing it like a story about a distant kingdom where her father had once been a prince. When he finished, she murmured something that pierced his heart. "You'll be an engineer again someday." Such certainty, such faith. Marcus kissed her forehead, breathing in the smell of her lavender shampoo. "Maybe, baby. Maybe." He turned off the light, left the door cracked open the way she needed it, made it halfway to the living room before he heard her calling him back. He returned to find her sitting up face tight with the fear that never quite left. "Daddy, you won't leave me, right? You won't disappear like Mummy?" Every night some version of this question. Every night Marcus's heart breaking and mending in the same breath. He sat back down, pulled her close. "Never, I promise, never. No matter what happens, I will always be here for you." She clung to him, small body trembling slightly. Promise. The weight of that word, the absolute trust she placed in it. Marcus had learned in 3 years that this was the most important promise he would ever make. More important than wedding vows, more binding than contracts, more sacred than any oath. This promise to his daughter that he would not abandon her, that she was not alone in the world. His voice came out fierce, absolute. "I promise, Ella. On my life, on everything I am, I will never leave you." She relaxed against him, believed him, trusted him with the kind of trust that could destroy a man if he ever broke it. Marcus stayed until she fell asleep, watching her breathe, checking the inhaler on her nightstand out of habit. 2 refills left. He needed to call the pharmacy tomorrow, see if he could stretch the prescription. Insurance covered most of it, but the copay was climbing. Everything was always climbing except his salary. He checked his bank account on his phone. £1, £247. Rent due in 5 days, $100. Groceries for the week, maybe $80 if he was careful. Ella's medicine copay, $180. The math didn't work. It never worked. But somehow every month he made it work. Over time. Skipped meals. Stretching everything until it nearly broke, but didn't quite. This was fatherhood. This was love. This was the price of keeping one small person safe and happy and believing the world could be good. Marcus pulled out his laptop, The old one that took 5 minutes to boot up and opened the folder he kept password protected. Evidence. 3 years of collected proof. Screenshots of his original code submissions. Emails showing his innovations. Design documents with his digital signature. The patents that bore someone else's name but contained his fingerprints in every line of logic. Rachel Whitmore wanted this evidence. Chairman Crawford needed it. But using it meant risk, meant stepping into the light, meant becoming visible in all the wrong ways. A black man accusing powerful white executives of theft. How did that usually end? Marcus knew the statistics, knew the stories, knew that being right didn't protect you when the system was designed to protect them. But Sarah's face haunted him. The settlement he'd signed buying his silence with money he'd burned through in medical bills and funeral costs, and the impossible expense of raising a child alone. 3 years of watching Robert Thornton take credit for work Marcus had created, watching the company profit from innovations he'd designed, watching his name get erased from every record that mattered. Ella deserved a father who fought, who showed her that injustice didn't have to be accepted, who demonstrated that silence wasn't the only option. Marcus closed the laptop. Tomorrow was Friday. Rachel wanted an answer by Monday. 3 days to decide whether to stay invisible or step into the light and risk everything. He lay down on the pull-out couch, the springs digging into his back through the thin mattress. Sleep came slowly, interrupted by thoughts of server rooms and resignation letters and a 7-year-old girl who believed her father could be an engineer again. Someday. Maybe. If he found the courage. Alinea was the kind of restaurant that made reservations 6 months in advance, where the cheapest wine cost $300 and the waitstaff moved like dancers in an elaborately choreographed performance. Victoria Hayes fit perfectly into this world, her black dress understated but clearly expensive, her posture radiating the confidence of someone who belonged. She sat across from James Crawford Sterling's chairman of the board and 2 potential investors from a Boston firm. The conversation flowed through acquisition strategies, market positioning, competitor analysis. Business conducted over food that arrived looking like art installations. Victoria was explaining the efficiency gains from their latest restructuring when something caught her eye at a nearby table. Someone. A man in a navy suit, the cut sharp enough to cost real money, sitting across from a blonde woman who leaned in with the intensity of serious conversation. The man's profile seemed familiar. Something about the line of his jaw, the way he held himself. Victoria's attention split between Crawford's question about timeline and the strange recognition nagging at her. Then the man turned slightly and Victoria's breath caught. Marcus Cole, the maintenance worker, the one she didn't know. Except here, he was at Alinea, in a suit that belonged in boardrooms, talking to a woman who radiated professional authority. Victoria's mind stuttered. The cognitive dissonance was physical. Maintenance workers didn't eat at Alinea. They didn't wear suits that fit like they were tailored. They didn't sit with beautiful professional women who touched their hands across white tablecloths. Crawford was still talking. Victoria nodded, made an appropriate response, but her attention had fractured. She watched Marcus from the corner of her eye, trying to reconcile the man at that table with the invisible figure she'd walked past for 2 years. He smiled. That's what broke something in Victoria's chest. The smile was warm, genuine, transforming his face into something she'd never seen at Sterling. At work, Marcus wore the neutral expression of someone trying not to be noticed. Here he looked alive, present, like someone who mattered to the woman across from him. Jealousy hit Victoria with surprising force. She had no right to it, no claim on this man, no relationship beyond the employer-employee distance she'd carefully maintained. But watching him be treated with respect, watching him receive attention and care, watching him smile like he deserved good things, stirred something ugly and confused in her chest. The woman, blonde and professional, wore a suit that screamed lawyer or consultant. She held papers, gestured as she talked clearly, explaining something complex. Marcus listened with complete attention, the kind of focus that made people feel heard. Victoria had seen that look before in her mirrors when she was preparing for negotiations. This was serious business, not romance. But why? What business did a maintenance worker have with a woman like that? The conversation at Victoria's table continued, but she participated on autopilot, her real attention tracking the interaction 10 feet away. She caught fragments when the restaurant noise ebbed. Numbers, dates, something about documentation. Then one word cut through clearly: Thornton. Victoria's entire body went alert. Robert Thornton, her CFO. Marcus Cole discussing Robert Thornton with a woman who looked like she prosecuted people for a living. The narrative assembled itself in Victoria's mind. Marcus meeting secretly with an outsider. Documents changing hands. References to a senior executive. All the markers of corporate espionage, of betrayal. of exactly the kind of insider threat that destroyed companies from within. Her first instinct was to confront them immediately, stand up, walk over demand answers. But something held her back. Maybe the setting, maybe the presence of the investors, maybe the small voice in her head whispering that she was missing something crucial. Victoria forced her attention back to Crawford's question about board approval timelines. She gave an answer that sounded confident. Inside her mind raced. Marcus Cole, who she'd never bothered to know, meeting with mystery women and discussing her CFO. This required investigation. Careful, thorough investigation. When the investors left, when Crawford said goodnight, Victoria remained in her seat longer than necessary. Marcus and the woman were still talking heads close together, his expression serious now. Victoria watched them through the window as she waited for her car. Watched them stand. Watched the woman hand Marcus a business card. Watched him slip it into his pocket with the care of something valuable. The jealousy had transformed into something darker. Suspicion. Anger. The sense of betrayal by someone who owed her loyalty, whether he knew it or not. Marcus Cole had just made himself visible, in all the wrong ways. Monday morning arrived with the false promise of routine. Marcus reached Sterling Industries at 5:47 a.m., early enough to avoid the day shift, late enough that night security wouldn't question his presence. The maintenance locker room smelled like industrial cleaner and old coffee. He changed into his work uniform, the fabric worn soft from 3 years of washing, his name embroidered over the pocket in thread that had started to fray. A note waited on his locker door, typed on company letterhead, "Report to CEO office 9 a.m. sharp. V. Hayes." Marcus's stomach dropped. In 2 years, Victoria Hayes had never acknowledged his existence, never requested a meeting, never sent him direct communication of any kind. Her name lived in company emails and quarterly announcements, distant as royalty, relevant only as the signature on policies that affected his schedule. Now she wanted to see him. 3 days after the restaurant. 3 days after Rachel Whitmore had laid out the evidence of Robert Thornton's crimes. 3 days after Marcus had half decided to testify. The timing couldn't be coincidence. Marcus pulled out his phone, called Rachel. Her voice came through sleep rough. "Marcus, it's 6 in the morning." He kept his voice low, aware of the thin walls. "Victoria Hayes wants to see me, 9 a.m., in her office." Silence, while Rachel processed this. Then, "Don't go alone. You have rights. I can be there, or we can get—" Marcus cut her off. "If I bring a lawyer, it confirms guilt. She'll know I'm hiding something. I have to go alone." Rachel's protest was immediate. "Marcus, if she accuses you—" He knew what she was going to say. If Victoria accused him of anything, if she fired him for cause, he'd lose unemployment benefits, references, any chance of finding another job that came with health insurance. His response came out flat, resigned. "I'll be careful. I'll call you after." He ended the call before she could argue more. Spent the next 2 hours doing his actual job, fixing a malfunctioning air handler in Building C, replacing filters, checking pressure readings. Routine work. Invisible work. The kind that kept buildings functioning and received zero recognition. At 8:55, Marcus changed out of his work clothes and into the only professional outfit he owned. Khaki's button-down shirt kept clean for parent-teacher conferences and job interviews he never got. He looked at himself in the locker room mirror, a black man in business casual about to walk into the CEO's office, about to be judged, about to be found wanting, probably because that's how these meetings usually ended. The elevator to the executive floor felt like ascending to judgment. Marcus had been up here exactly twice before. Once during his initial interview 4 years ago, once when he'd tried to report the intellectual property theft and been told to focus on his current responsibilities. Victoria's assistant sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Marcus's car. She looked up, her expression carefully neutral in the way that signaled she'd been warned about him. "Mr. Cole, you can go in." Victoria's office was everything Marcus's workspace wasn't. Huge windows overlooking Chicago, furniture that whispered wealth, art on the walls that probably had names and values he'd never understand. And Victoria Hayes behind a desk the size of a small car, her posture perfect, her expression cold enough to frost the glass. She didn't stand, didn't smile, didn't invite him to sit. Her voice came out precise, controlled. "Mr. Cole, I have a special project for you." Marcus waited. Didn't trust his voice yet. Victoria continued. "Building C HVAC system needs complete overhaul. 2 weeks. You'll report directly to me daily on progress." The request sounded reasonable. The subtext screamed something else entirely. Victoria Hayes didn't personally oversee maintenance projects. She didn't request daily reports from technicians. This was surveillance dressed up as assignment. Marcus chose his words carefully. "That's a 4-person job requiring 6 weeks minimum. I'd need to work late, which means—" Victoria interrupted, her tone sharpening. which means you'll adjust your schedule accordingly. The assumption in those words, the casual dismissal of anything outside work. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. He tried again. Ms. Hayes, I pick up my daughter from school every day at 3:30. If I work late, I need advance notice to arrange childcare. I'm asking if I'll be allowed to maintain... This time, her interruption was colder. Mr. Cole, this is a direct assignment from the CEO. Are you telling me your personal life takes priority over company needs? There it was, the trap. Say yes, and he was insubordinate. Say no, and he abandoned Ella. The impossible choice that had defined his existence for 3 years. Marcus understood suddenly with perfect clarity what this meeting actually was. Victoria had seen him at Alinea, had drawn conclusions, was now testing him, controlling him, making sure he understood his place. This wasn't about the HVAC system. This was about power, about reminding him that he was disposable. Something in his chest shifted. The part that had been bending for 3 years, accommodating, surviving, making it work. That part reached its limit. But he wasn't ready to break yet. Ella still needed the health insurance. He still needed the paycheck. His voice came out steady, hiding everything. I understand, ma'am. I'll make it work. Victoria's expression didn't change. See that you do. Dismissed. Marcus turned and walked out each step, measured, refusing to let her see how badly the humiliation burned. In the elevator alone, he let himself breathe. Let his hands shake. Let the rage and shame and helplessness wash through him. He texted Mrs. Washington, the elderly neighbor who'd helped him through Sarah's death and the years after. Emergency at work this week. Can you pick up Ella? I'll pay double. Her response came immediately. Of course, baby. Don't you worry about payment. We take care of our own. Marcus closed his eyes, leaning against the elevator wall. Mrs. Washington took care of him because he'd fixed her plumbing for free, repaired her nephew's computer, helped her carry groceries. Because he'd built relationships in his neighborhood, invested in community, created the safety net that employers refused to provide. But those relationships couldn't replace what he was losing. Every late pickup chipped away at Ella's sense of security. Every broken promise about being home for dinner reinforced her fear of abandonment. Every time he chose work over her, he taught her that she came second. The elevator opened on the ground floor. Marcus walked to the maintenance room, changed back into his uniform and got to work. Made it work, the way he always did, the way he always would, until something finally broke. Diana Ashford understood power the way some people understood music. You didn't need to hold it directly, you just needed to control who did. She'd been watching Victoria Hayes for 2 years, cultivating trust, feeding carefully selected information, positioning herself as the indispensable advisor. And she'd been working with Robert Thornton for 5 years, since before he'd brought her to Sterling, back when they'd both worked at another firm and discovered their mutual talent for profitable corruption. Robert's embezzlement operation was elegant. Shell consulting companies, inflated vendor contracts, money disappearing into offshore accounts in amounts small enough to avoid immediate detection, large enough to build real wealth. Diana's role was simpler. Keep Victoria looking in the wrong direction. Control the narrative. Manage the image. Marcus Cole had become a problem 3 days ago when Robert spotted him at Alinea with Rachel Whitmore. Robert knew exactly who Rachel was. Chairman Crawford's secretly hired investigator. The woman building a case. Now Marcus needed to be neutralized, discredited, made into a villain before he could become a witness. Diana sat in her office, expensive coffee cooling on her desk, and planned the afternoon's work. First, leak the security footage to the executive chat. The footage showing Marcus leaving the building with Rachel twice last week. Add no commentary. Let people draw their own conclusions. Second, plant a seed with Lisa Monroe in HR. Casual mention that Marcus had been acting strange, meeting with outsiders, possibly disgruntled about his demotion. Just enough to create a file, a paper trail, evidence of concerns raised. Third, ensure Victoria saw Marcus and Rachel together again. Confirm her suspicions. Let her natural paranoia do the rest. Diana pulled up the executive chat and attached the first video clip. Typed a message designed for maximum impact while maintaining plausible deniability. Noticed some unusual activity on building security feeds. Maintenance staff meeting with unidentified individuals multiple times. Thought leadership should be aware. She hit send. Watched the read receipts populate. Watched the replies start coming in. Concern, questions, speculation. Perfect. Her phone rang. Robert Thornton, voice tight. Did you handle it? Diana's response came out smooth, confident. Victoria's already suspicious. By Friday she'll have enough to fire him for cause. By Monday, he'll be unemployed and discredited. Rachel Whitmore can't use a witness with zero credibility. Robert's relief was audible. Good. Crawford's been asking too many questions. We need to move our timeline up. Diana had been expecting this. The sabotage, Robert confirmed, this weekend. System crash, stock price tanks. Our buyers move in. Victoria gets blamed for the operational failure. We exit clean. The plan had been months in the making. Deliberate sabotage designed to look like natural system failure, stock price collapse, acquisition by a group Robert secretly controlled, asset stripping, profits. Robert and Diana would walk away with millions while Sterling Industries burned. But first, they needed Marcus Cole, silenced, discredited, gone. Diana pulled up the second video clip. I'll make sure Victoria sees this today. By tonight, Cole will be too busy defending himself to worry about testimony. She ended the call and got to work. Power wasn't about what you could do directly. It was about what you could make other people do for you. And Victoria Hayes, brilliant and paranoid and completely blind to the manipulation, was about to do exactly what Diana needed. All because of a maintenance worker who dared to meet with the wrong lawyer. Marcus picked up Ella at 6:47 p.m. 2 hours late, his back aching from emergency repairs that had somehow materialized the moment Victoria's meeting ended. Mrs. Washington had fed her dinner, helped with homework, done everything Marcus should have done. Ella's face when she saw him was complicated. Relief, hurt, resignation. 7 years old, and she'd already learned to manage disappointment. In the car, she asked the question quietly. Did you have to work late because of me? The question destroyed him. No, baby. Never because of you. But Ella was smart enough to know better. You always have to work late. Because you pick me up. Because of me. Marcus pulled into a parking lot, turned to face her fully. She deserved truth, age-appropriate, but real. Ella, I work late sometimes because my boss doesn't understand that being your daddy is the most important job I have. That's not your fault. That's her not seeing what matters. But I will always choose you. Always. Ella's eyes filled with tears she was trying to hold back. But what if you lose your job? What if we can't pay rent? 7 years old, worrying about rent, about health insurance, about adult problems no child should carry. Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt, pulled her into a hug across the console. I will figure it out. I always do. Your job is to be 7, to learn about butterflies, to draw pictures, to be happy. My job is to worry about the rest. Deal. She nodded against his shoulder, small body, trembling. Deal. They went home. Marcus heated up the dinner Mrs. Washington had made. They ate in relative silence, Ella still processing the fear, Marcus calculating how much longer he could sustain this. The late nights, the impossible schedules, the constant accommodation that was never enough. His phone buzzed during cleanup. Rachel Whitmore. How did it go? Marcus stepped into the bathroom for privacy, called her back, kept his voice low. She's testing me.
Gave me an impossible project with an impossible timeline. She knows something. Rachel's response was sharp. She saw us at Alinea. She's suspicious. Marcus leaned against the sink. Suspicious of what corporate espionage? I'm a maintenance worker. What could I possibly steal? Rachel's pause told him she was choosing words carefully. Marcus, if she fires you before Crawford can act, we lose our best witness. Can you hold on until the board meeting? 2 more weeks. 2 weeks of late nights. 2 weeks of Ella crying herself to sleep. 2 weeks of watching his daughter learn that promises were fragile things that broke under pressure. His reflection in the mirror looked tired. Older than 36. A man grinding himself down to provide basic security for one small person who deserved so much better. Marcus heard himself say words he hadn't planned. I can't do this anymore, Rachel. Her shock was immediate. What? The truth poured out quiet but absolute. I've been making it work for 3 years, swallowing humiliation, accepting invisibility, letting them treat me like I'm nothing. And I told myself it was worth it. For Ella, for the health insurance, for survival. But she's 7 years old and worried about rent. She's learning that her father is powerless. That's not what I want to teach her. Rachel's voice softened. Marcus, if you testify, Crawford will protect you. I promise. Promises. Marcus had learned what those were worth. Sarah had promised to come home from work. The company had promised the equipment was safe. Robert Thornton had promised the settlement was fair. Promises were words people said before they broke your heart. He told Rachel he'd think about it. Ended the call. Went to check on Ella. She was already in her pajamas, already in bed, clutching the stuffed butterfly he'd bought her for her 6th birthday. The last birthday with Sarah. She looked up when he entered. Daddy, are you okay? Children shouldn't have to worry about their parents' emotional state. Children should be worried about by their parents, not for them. Marcus sat on her bed, smoothed her braids. I'm okay, baby. Just tired. Ella studied his face with the intensity of someone who'd learned to read beneath words. You're sad. About work. No point lying. Yeah, a little. Her next question was so quiet he almost missed it. Do you wish you didn't have to take care of me? Marcus's heart cracked. He pulled her into his arms, held her tight. Never. Not for 1 second. You are the best thing in my life. The only thing that makes sense. Taking care of you isn't the hard part, Ella. The hard part is the world not understanding that you're worth everything. She clung to him. I love you, Daddy. The 3 most important words in any language. I love you too, baby, more than anything. He stayed until she fell asleep, watching her breathe, checking her inhaler, making sure she felt safe. Then he went to the living room, pulled out his laptop, and did what he'd been avoiding for 3 days. Marcus opened his email and started typing. The resignation letter wrote itself. Simple, professional, effective immediately. Friday morning, Marcus woke up with the letter saved on his laptop and a decision crystallizing in his chest. He made Ella breakfast, braided her hair, walked her to the bus stop, kissed her goodbye, and told her he loved her. Then he printed the resignation letter at the library, folded it, put it in his pocket, and went to work. Victoria's summons came at 9:52 a.m. Conference room B. Marcus knew what this was before he walked in. The formal accusation, the documented concerns, the careful building of a case for termination. He walked in anyway. Sat down across from Victoria Hayes, Robert Thornton, and Lisa Monroe from HR. 3 white executives. 1 black maintenance worker. The power dynamics were architectural. Victoria didn't waste time on pleasantries. She pulled up security footage on the conference room screen. Marcus with Rachel leaving the building. Marcus with Rachel at a coffee shop. 2 meetings. Innocent. Damning in context. Victoria's voice was ice. Mr. Cole, explain your relationship with this woman. Marcus looked at the screen at Rachel's professional suit, at his own careful posture. He knew how this looked. He knew what Victoria thought. His response came out measured. That's private, ma'am. Wrong answer. Victoria's expression hardened. You're meeting with outsiders, exchanging documents on company property. Are you selling proprietary information? The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. Corporate espionage, theft, betrayal, the kind of charge that destroyed careers and reputations. Marcus felt the familiar weight settle on his chest. The weight of being black in a room full of white power. The weight of being assumed guilty until proven innocent, if you could prove innocence at all. The weight of knowing that defending yourself too forcefully made you aggressive, but not defending yourself at all confirmed guilt. He chose calm, chose dignity. No, ma'am. Victoria leaned forward. Then explain. The trap was perfect. Explain meant revealing Rachel's investigation. Revealing the investigation meant tipping off Robert. Not explaining meant confirming suspicion. There was no winning move. Marcus held her gaze. I don't owe you an explanation about my private life. Robert Thornton jumped in his tone, helpful, concerned. Victoria, I've had concerns about Mr. Cole for some time. Frequent schedule changes, meeting with strangers, refusing to cooperate with direct orders. The pattern suggests... Marcus turned to look at Robert Thornton directly. The man who'd killed Sarah through negligence. The man who'd bought Marcus's silence. The man who was now framing him as a criminal to protect his own crimes. Robert's words died under that look. Marcus didn't say anything, didn't need to. The look said everything. I know who you are, I know what you did. This theatre doesn't fool me. Victoria filled the silence. From now on, Mr. Cole, you'll follow my schedule. No exceptions, no special accommodations. If you can't commit fully to this company, perhaps you should reconsider your employment here. The threat was clear. Submit or leave. Become completely controlled or lose everything. Marcus had spent 3 years making impossible choices. 3 years sacrificing dignity for survival. 3 years teaching his daughter through example that powerless people had to accept whatever powerful people demanded. No more. He stood up, reached into his pocket, pulled out the resignation letter he'd written at 4 a.m. while Ella slept, placed it on the conference table between them. Victoria's eyes widened slightly. Robert's expression flickered. Lisa Monroe looked stricken. Marcus's voice came out clear, steady, carrying 3 years of accumulated truth. You never knew who I was, Ms. Hayes. In 2 years you never learned my name. Never asked who fixed your systems, who saved your data, who kept this company running while you slept. But now you want to decide how I live, want to control my time, accuse me of crimes without evidence, treat me like I'm disposable, like I'm nothing." He paused, let the words land. "I work here because my daughter needs health insurance. That's the only reason. But I won't let her grow up watching her father be treated like a criminal for being innocent. I won't teach her that dignity has no value, that silence is the only option, that power always wins." Marcus looked directly at Robert Thornton. "You stole my work. You know it. I know it. Soon everyone will know it." He turned back to Victoria. "I resign. Effective immediately." Walked out. Didn't wait for response. Didn't look back. Behind him, Victoria stared at the letter. Lisa Monroe looked close to tears, and Robert Thornton's face was a mask hiding calculation. Marcus walked to his locker, changed out of his uniform for the last time, and left Sterling Industries. He picked up Ella from school at 3:28, 2 minutes early. She saw his face and knew immediately. "Daddy, what happened?" Marcus knelt down to her level there on the sidewalk with other parents watching. "Daddy quit his job today." Terror flashed across her face. "Because of me. Because you had to pick me up." He pulled her close, held her tight. "No, baby. Never because of you. Because I wasn't being treated right. And I need you to know that your father doesn't accept that. That some things matter more than money. That we'll be okay because we have each other." Ella cried. Marcus held her. Let the other parents stare. Let them judge. He'd just chosen his daughter over security, dignity over survival, truth over fear. For the first time in 3 years, Marcus Cole felt visible, seen, present, and absolutely terrified about what came next. Victoria Hayes sat in her corner office at 6:47 p.m. on Friday evening staring at a resignation letter that made no sense. Marcus Cole's words echoed in the silence. "You never knew who I was." The accusation stung worse than it should. Why did it matter whether she knew the name of a maintenance worker? Why did his contempt burn like acid? She pressed the intercom. "Get me Marcus Cole's complete personnel file. Everything." Her assistant's voice came back hesitant. "Ma'am, it's almost 7. I can pull that Monday." Victoria cut her off. "Now. I'll wait." 20 minutes later, the file arrived. Victoria opened it expecting the thin documentation of a minor employee. Instead, she found a career that told a story she'd been too blind to see. Marcus Cole, hired 4 years ago as senior infrastructure engineer. Starting salary $127,000. Performance reviews for the first year exceptional, innovative, indispensable. He'd designed Sterling's core server architecture, the system currently running the company. Every critical backup protocol bore his digital signature. Then a gap. 3 months of blank space in his employment record. When the documentation resumed, everything had changed. New position, maintenance technician. New salary, $42,000. New department, facilities. No explanation for the demotion. Just a notation. Reassignment approved by CFO Robert Thornton per settlement agreement. Settlement agreement. The words jumped out. Victoria clicked deeper, found a locked file marked confidential, restricted access. Her CEO override opened it. The document loaded slowly, each line another hammer blow. Sarah Cole, née Williams, age 32, died April 2, 2022 at Sterling Industries' Cicero manufacturing facility. Hydraulic press malfunction during routine maintenance. Investigation findings, equipment. Safety inspection delayed 4 months due to budget reductions. Budget reductions approved Q4 2021, CFO Robert Thornton. Estimated cost savings, $340,000. Estimated cost of negligence, 1 human life. Victoria's coffee turned to stone in her stomach. The settlement terms followed. $500,000 payment to Marcus Cole. Continuation of health benefits for dependent child, Sophie No Ella. Ella Cole, age 4 at time of incident. In exchange, no lawsuit, no public disclosure. Immediate acceptance of reassignment to position outside engineering division to facilitate healing and transition. Signed, Robert Thornton, CFO. Countersigned, James Crawford, board chairman. Victoria read it 3 times. Then she read the investigator's report attached to the file. Hydraulic press had been flagged for maintenance in December 2021. Work order submitted, approved, then cancelled. Budget freeze. Equipment deemed acceptable for continued operation pending next fiscal year maintenance allocation. Sarah Cole had been performing routine maintenance on equipment that 12 people had warned was unsafe. Equipment that had killed her because Robert Thornton wanted to hit a quarterly profit target. And Marcus. Marcus had signed away his right to sue,
had accepted a demotion from engineer to janitor, had taken the money and the silence because he had a 4-year-old daughter who needed health care. Robert Thornton had killed this man's wife and then bought him off, made him invisible, kept him powerless. And Victoria had spent 2 years walking past him without bothering to learn his name. She pulled up the security footage from earlier today, watched Marcus stand up in that conference room, watched his dignity even in defeat, watched him tell the truth to people who'd never bothered to hear it. Her phone buzzed. Text from Robert Thornton. Cole situation handled. He resigned.
One less problem to worry about. Victoria stared at the message. One less problem. A man whose wife died because of negligence. A father raising a child alone. An engineer demoted to silence him. Robert saw him as a problem solved. What did that make her? She'd been Robert's willing tool. She'd accused Marcus without evidence. She'd threatened his livelihood. She'd become the mechanism of his oppression. Victoria opened a new browser tab and searched Rachel Whitmore, Attorney Chicago. The results populated immediately. Rachel Whitmore, corporate fraud investigator, formerly with the SEC, now private practice, specializing in whistleblower cases. Her client list included 3 Fortune 500 companies, multiple successful prosecutions, a reputation for thorough, relentless investigation. Not Marcus's girlfriend, not corporate espionage, his lawyer, or rather someone's lawyer investigating Sterling Industries. Victoria's mind clicked through possibilities. Crawford had hired Rachel. Had to be Crawford. The chairman was the only one with authority to authorize an outside investigation without board approval, which meant Crawford suspected Robert, which meant the meeting at Alinea wasn't betrayal, it was preparation. And Victoria had walked into Robert's trap like an obedient puppet doing his work for him, eliminating his accuser before the accusation could land. She dialed Rachel Whitmore's office, got voicemail, left a message. Ms. Whitmore, this is Victoria Hayes, CEO of Sterling Industries. I need to speak with you urgently about Marcus Cole and Robert Thornton. Please call me back tonight. Then she did something she hadn't done in 2 years. She left the office before 9 p.m., drove home to her empty apartment, sat in the dark trying to figure out how she'd become someone who destroyed innocent people to protect guilty ones. Her mother's voice echoed from 20 years past. They don't care about truth, Victoria. They care about profit. Don't ever let them make you like them. Too late, Mum. Too late. Saturday morning arrived cold and merciless. Victoria woke at 5:30 a.m. from dreams of hydraulic presses and broken bodies. She made coffee she didn't drink and waited for Rachel Whitmore to call back. The call came at 7:42 a.m. Rachel's voice was professional, cautious. Ms. Hayes, you wanted to discuss Marcus Cole. Victoria skipped pleasantries. I found the confidential settlement about his wife. Robert Thornton killed her through negligence and paid Marcus to stay quiet, then demoted him to keep him invisible. And yesterday I accused him of corporate espionage and forced him to resign. I need to know what you're investigating and how I can help fix what I've done. Silence on the line. Then, why should I trust you? Fair question. Victoria had no good answer except, because I just destroyed a good man's life to protect a criminal, and I want to make it right. Because Marcus deserves justice for his wife. Because if Robert did this to him, he's done worse to others. And because I'm the CEO, which means I have access, you don't. More silence. Victoria waited, letting Rachel evaluate. Finally, can you meet in person? I don't discuss this over phone. They agreed on a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, neutral territory, public enough to be safe. Victoria arrived first, claimed a corner table, ordered coffee she still wouldn't drink. Rachel appeared at 8:30 professional in weekend casual, carrying a leather briefcase that suggested serious documentation. She sat without preamble. What changed your mind about Marcus? Victoria pulled out her phone, showed the settlement document she'd photographed. This. And realizing that the maintenance worker I ignored for 2 years designed the systems keeping my company alive, that the man I accused of theft had his work stolen by the person I trusted most, that I've been Robert Thornton's useful idiot. Rachel studied Victoria's face, measuring sincerity. Marcus doesn't trust you. Can't blame him. The words cut. I know, but I can help anyway. What are you investigating? Rachel opened her briefcase, pulled out a folder. Robert Thornton has been embezzling from Sterling for 5 years. Shell consulting companies, inflated vendor contracts, offshore accounts. We're talking 2.3 million so far. He's also been systematically stealing intellectual property from engineers and crediting it to his finance department. Marcus's work is just the most egregious example. There are others. She slid documents across the table. Victoria read through increasing horror. 8 engineers over 5 years, all demoted or transferred after their innovations were credited to Robert's team. Millions in value.
careers destroyed, silence bought with NDAs and settlements. Rachel continued. Chairman Crawford suspected financial irregularities 6 months ago, hired me to investigate quietly.
I approached Marcus because he kept records, 3 years of documentation, every stolen patent, every falsified report, every piece of evidence Robert thought he'd erased. Victoria's mind raced ahead. Marcus was going to testify. Rachel nodded. Was. Past tense. He called me last night. Said he's done. Can't risk it. Has to focus on finding another job with health insurance before Ella's medication runs out. The coffee turned colder. When does her medication run out? Rachel checked her notes. 2 refills, maybe 3 weeks. 3 weeks. A 7-year-old child with asthma dependent on medication, father unemployed because Victoria had been too stupid to see the truth. Victoria heard herself asking, "What do you need from me?" Rachel's eyes sharpened. Access to Robert's computer and phone, communication records, financial documentation that only C-suite can authorize, and you need to convince Marcus to testify. Crawford scheduled the board meeting for Monday. 2 days from now. We move then, or Robert disappears the evidence. Victoria absorbed this. Monday. That's fast. Rachel's expression was grim. Robert knows we're close. He's been deleting files, moving money. We have a narrow window. Victoria thought of Marcus, of Ella, of a man who'd chosen dignity over security and was now terrified about how to keep his daughter alive. I'll get you the access, but I don't know if Marcus will listen to me. Rachel stood gathering her documents. Then you'd better figure out how to make him listen, because without his testimony we have evidence but no witness. Robert will claim the documents are fabricated. He'll walk. She left. Victoria sat alone with cold coffee and the weight of consequences. She pulled out her phone, opened her contacts, scrolled to a name she'd programmed 2 years ago and never called. Lisa Monroe, HR director. The one person in that conference room yesterday who'd looked stricken when Marcus resigned. The call connected. Lisa, it's Victoria. I need Marcus Cole's home address. Marcus spent Saturday morning trying to explain to Ella why Daddy didn't have to go to work, why they had time for the library before lunch, why everything was going to be okay even though nothing felt okay. She didn't believe him. Smart kid. They walked to the Harold Washington Library, Ella's hand in his, her questions coming in the careful way she asked things that scared her. Daddy, what happens if you can't find a new job? Marcus had been dreading this question. I'll find one, baby. I always do. Ella's grip tightened. But what if it doesn't have good insurance? What if I can't get my medicine? 7 years old, worrying about insurance formularies and prescription coverage. Marcus wanted to scream at the universe that made this her burden. Instead, he knelt on the sidewalk, meeting her eyes. Ella, listen to me. You will always have your medicine. If I have to work 3 jobs, if I have to sell everything we own, you will be okay. That's a promise I will never break. She searched his face for the lie, didn't find one. Okay. They continued walking. The library rose ahead, solid and permanent, one of the few free spaces left where people without money could still exist with dignity. Inside, they went to the children's section. Ella headed straight for the books about butterflies and insects, her current obsession. Marcus settled into a reading chair, watching her browse with the seriousness of a scholar. Mrs. Washington, the children's librarian, who knew them by name, approached with a warm smile. Marcus, Ella, I didn't expect to see you on a Saturday. The emphasis on Saturday told Marcus she knew he usually worked weekends, got some time off. Mrs. Washington's expression suggested she understood what time off really meant, but was too kind to say, well, Ella's butterfly book came in, the one she requested. Let me grab it. She returned with a hardcover about monarch migration. Ella's face lit up like sunrise. They spent 2 hours in the library. Ella reading about butterflies, Marcus pretending to read job listings on his phone while actually calculating how long their savings would last. 6 weeks. Maybe 8 if he skipped meals and delayed every non-essential expense. Not enough. Never enough. At 1:15 they walked to Lou's Diner, their Saturday tradition. The same booth in the back, the same waitress who knew their order before they sat down. Jenny brought pancakes for Ella, coffee for Marcus. Haven't seen you two this early on a Saturday in forever. Marcus managed something like a smile. Playing hooky. Jenny winked at Ella. Your daddy's a rebel. Ella giggled through a mouthful of pancakes. The sound was pure joy, uncomplicated, the kind of happiness Marcus lived to create. For these moments, the resignation was worth it. The uncertainty was worth it. Ella's laughter justified everything. But then she asked, Daddy, why did you really quit your job? The laughter faded. Marcus set down his coffee. Because they weren't treating me right, baby. And I needed you to see that sometimes walking away is braver than staying. Ella considered this with her unsettling wisdom. But you're scared now, I can tell. No point lying to her. Yeah, I'm scared. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you're terrified. She reached across the table, her small hand covering his much larger one. I'm scared too. But we'll be okay. Because we have each other. Marcus's throat closed. She was comforting him. 7 years old, and she'd learned to be the strong one because her father was crumbling. He turned his hand over, squeezed hers gently. That's right, baby. We have each other. That's enough. Jenny brought the check. Marcus paid with money he couldn't afford to spend, tipped with money he definitely couldn't afford, because Jenny had always been kind, and kindness deserved recognition. Outside the diner, Marcus's phone buzzed. Rachel. Victoria Hayes knows everything. She wants to help. Can we meet? Marcus typed back, no. Rachel's response was immediate. Marcus, please. She found Sarah's settlement. She understands what Robert did. She has access we need. Marcus stared at the message. Victoria Hayes had humiliated him, accused him, threatened his livelihood. Now she wanted to help. Now that he'd already lost everything. He texted, tell her I said go to hell. Put his phone away. Took Ella's hand. Headed home to figure out which bills to pay first and which ones could wait. Victoria sat in her Mercedes across from Marcus's apartment building feeling like a stalker. Lisa Munro had given her the address with visible reluctance and a warning. Whatever you're planning, be careful. Marcus has been through enough. The building was old but maintained. Kids played in the courtyard. Laundry hung from some balconies, the kind of neighborhood where people looked out for each other because nobody else would. She'd been sitting here for 20 minutes when Marcus and Ella appeared walking hand in hand from the direction of the commercial district. Victoria watched them climb the exterior stairs, Ella chattering Marcus, listening with complete attention. The way he looked at his daughter, the way he moved to keep himself between her and the street, the way he stopped to let her show him something in a book. Everything about his body language screamed protector, caregiver, devoted father. Victoria had never wanted children, had never understood people who did. But watching Marcus with Ella, she glimpsed something she'd been missing. The way love could make you simultaneously stronger and more vulnerable. The way another person's happiness could matter more than your own survival. They disappeared into the building. Victoria sat in her car debating. She could knock on his door, force a conversation. But what would she say? Sorry, I destroyed your life. Sorry, I was too blind to see the truth. Words were insufficient for the damage she'd done. Her phone rang. Rachel Whitmore. He won't meet with us. Victoria had expected this. I know. I'm outside his apartment. Rachel's shock was audible. You're what? Victoria watched the window where she'd seen lights come on. I need to apologize, face to face, whether he listens or not. Rachel's sigh carried through the phone. Victoria, if you push too hard, you'll make it worse. Give him space. But space was what Victoria had given him for 2 years. Space was what had allowed her to ignore him, dismiss him, abuse her power over him. Space had enabled every mistake. She ended the call, got out of the car and walked to the building entrance. The directory showed Cole M. 4B. She climbed the stairs, each step feeling like approaching judgment. The door to 4B was painted green, slightly scuffed at the bottom, like it had been kicked open by small feet carrying too many grocery bags. Victoria raised her hand to knock, then heard voices inside, Ella's voice clear and bright. Daddy, can we have ice cream after dinner? Marcus's response warm with affection. May we have ice cream? And yes. Ella again. May we, Marcus? Much better. The domestic intimacy of it stopped Victoria's hand mid-knock. This was their home, their sanctuary, their private world. She had no right to invade it. But she'd come this far. Victoria knocked 3 times. Firm, but not aggressive. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Marcus stood there in jeans and a worn t-shirt, surprise flickering across his face before settling into wariness. His voice came out flat. Ms. Hayes. Victoria opened her mouth, but before she could speak, Ella appeared beside her father. Small, protective. Her face set in an expression no 7-year-old should have to wear. Ella's words came out hard. You're the lady who made my daddy quit. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Victoria knelt to Ella's eye level, meeting those fierce eyes. Yes, I am, and I'm so sorry. Ella didn't soften. Sorry doesn't fix things. The truth of it? Victoria looked up at Marcus. You're right, it doesn't, but I'm trying to learn how to fix them. Can I talk to your dad? Just for a few minutes. Ella looked at Marcus, questioning. Marcus's expression was complicated. Anger, exhaustion, Something that might have been curiosity. He nodded once. Ella, go to your room. Colour for a bit. Ella hesitated, clearly not wanting to leave her father alone with this woman who'd hurt him. But she obeyed, shooting Victoria one more warning look before disappearing down the hall. Marcus didn't invite Victoria inside, just stepped into the hallway, pulling the door mostly closed behind him, creating a barrier, maintaining control of his space. He crossed his arms. "Why are you here?" Victoria had rehearsed this, had planned what to say. All of it evaporated under his direct gaze. "I read the file. About Sarah, about what Robert did, about the settlement. I'm so sorry." Marcus's jaw tightened. "You had no right to access that." Another truth. "I know. I'm sorry for that too, but I needed to understand why Robert was so eager to discredit you." His laugh was bitter. "And now you understand." Victoria held his gaze. "Now I understand that I've been blind. For 2 years you worked at my company and I never knew your name. You saved systems, prevented disasters, and I never said thank you. You were invisible to me. And when I finally noticed you, I did it for the worst possible reason. I was jealous." That surprised him. "Jealous?" Heat rose in Victoria's cheeks. "I saw you at Alinea, with Rachel. You looked happy, respected, treated like you mattered, and I realized I'd never made anyone feel that way, never inspired that kind of loyalty. So instead of asking questions, I assumed the worst, accused you without evidence, became exactly what you said I was, someone who never bothered to know who you were." Marcus's expression didn't soften. "Why are you here, Ms. Hayes?" She met his eyes. "To ask you to come back, temporarily, to help take down Robert Thornton. Rachel told me about the investigation, about your evidence, about the board meeting Monday." Marcus's response was immediate. "No." Victoria had expected this. "Marcus!" He cut her off. "You don't get it. I saved your company for 3 years, 48 times. Nobody noticed. Nobody cared. Then you finally see me and immediately assume I'm a criminal. You threatened my daughter's health care. You made me choose between dignity and survival, and I chose dignity. For once in 3 years I chose myself, and now you want me to come back to save the company again, to help you fix your mistake." Every word was justified, every accusation true. Victoria absorbed it without defense. "You're right, about all of it. But this isn't about saving the company. It's about getting justice for Sarah. For you, for every engineer Robert destroyed. Rachel says without your testimony, Robert walks. He disappears, the evidence restructures, and continues destroying people." Marcus's expression was stone. "Not my problem anymore." Victoria tried again. "Ella deserves to know her father fought back, that he didn't let the people who killed her mother get away with it." Wrong thing to say. Marcus's eyes flashed. "Don't you dare use my daughter to manipulate me." "You don't know anything about what Ella deserves. You don't know her. You don't know me. You showed up here uninvited, violated my privacy, and now you're trying to guilt me into helping you. I'm done being used." He turned to go inside. Victoria spoke quickly. "I'll guarantee Ella's health insurance. Contract. Signed. 2 years of coverage regardless of what happens. Rachel already confirmed Crawford will agree." Marcus paused, hand on the doorknob. "And after 2 years..." Victoria met his eyes. "After 2 years, you'll have been CTO of Sterling Industries long enough to have your pick of positions anywhere. With recommendations from me and Crawford, your daughter will never be without coverage again." He turned back. "CTO?" Victoria nodded. "Chief Technology Officer. You designed our systems. You've proven your integrity. You deserve the position. But more than that, Sterling deserves someone who actually understands the technology instead of just managing it." Marcus studied her face, looking for the manipulation, the catch. "Why would I trust you?" The question hung between them. Victoria had no good answer except honesty. "You shouldn't. I've given you 0 reason to. But Ella told me something when I knocked on your door. She said sorry doesn't fix things. And she's right. Sorry is just words. Actions fix things. So here's my action. I'm offering you everything Robert took, your position, your recognition, your security. And I'm promising to stand beside you when we confront him regardless of what it costs me." Marcus's expression cracked slightly. "What could it possibly cost you?" Victoria allowed herself a bitter smile. "Robert Thornton is my CFO, my trusted advisor. The board will ask why I didn't know, why I didn't prevent this, why I let a criminal operate under my watch for 2 years. This will damage my credibility, might cost me my job. But that's fine, because unlike you, I actually deserve to lose it." Silence stretched between them. Victoria waited, giving Marcus the space to decide without pressure. Finally, his voice came out careful. "I have conditions." Relief flooded through her. "Name them." Marcus met her eyes. Rachel participates fully. No shutting her out. Crawford's investigation continues without interference. If Robert is guilty, he faces real consequences. Criminal charges, prison, not just a resignation and a golden parachute. Victoria nodded. Agreed. Marcus continued. Ella's health insurance stays active regardless of outcome. In writing, today. And you implement a system where every employee from janitor to CEO gets credited for their contributions. No more invisible people. Victoria pulled out her phone. I'll have legal draft it tonight. You'll have it in the morning. Marcus studied her for a long moment. And one more thing. Victoria waited. His voice dropped lower. If you ever use my daughter to manipulate me again, if you ever threaten her security, if you ever make her feel unsafe, I walk, immediately. And I take every piece of evidence I have public. Do you understand? The steel in his voice, the absolute certainty. This was a father protecting his child. Victoria respected it more than anything else he could have said. I understand. And I promise, Ella's safety and security are non-negotiable. Marcus nodded slowly. Okay. When do we start? Victoria checked her watch. Rachel is assembling the team in 2 hours. Crawford's house. Can you make it? Marcus glanced back at his apartment at the door where Ella was surely listening. I need to arrange childcare. Victoria surprised herself. Bring her. Crawford's wife is a retired teacher. She loves kids. And Ella should see her father being treated with respect. By all of us. Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Not quite trust, but maybe the beginning of possibility. He opened his apartment door, called inside. Ella, we're going out. Pack your butterfly book. James Crawford's home in Evanston was the kind of old money estate that whispered wealth instead of shouting it. Marcus pulled his Honda into the circular drive, feeling acutely aware of the rust spot on the passenger door and the crack in the windshield he couldn't afford to fix. Ella pressed her face to the window. Daddy, is this a castle? Marcus managed to smile. Not quite baby, but it's nice, right? She nodded, eyes wide. This was a world Marcus had been part of briefly 4 years ago when he'd been senior engineer Cole invited to executive strategy sessions and company parties. Before Sarah. Before everything changed. Victoria met them at the door, having arrived earlier. She'd changed from her stalker casual outfit into something more professional, but still weekend appropriate. Her eyes went to Ella. Hi, Ella. I'm glad you came. Ella hid slightly behind Marcus's leg, still wary. Hi. An older woman appeared, 60s, warm smile, comfortable elegance. You must be Ella. I'm Margaret. My husband James told me we'd have a special guest today. Do you like cookies? Ella's eyes widened. Yes, Ma'am. Margaret held out her hand. Come on. I just made chocolate chip. We can leave the boring grown-ups to their meeting. Ella looked up at Marcus for permission. He knelt down. I'll be in the next room. If you need me, just call. Okay. She nodded, then surprised him by turning to Victoria. You be nice to my daddy. Victoria's expression softened. I promise. Ella took Margaret's hand and disappeared toward what sounded like a kitchen. Marcus watched her go, then followed Victoria into Crawford's study. The room was designed for serious conversations. Leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a conference table that could seat 12, currently occupied by 5 people. James Crawford stood when Marcus entered, extending his hand. Mr. Cole, thank you for coming. The handshake was firm, respectful. Marcus shook hands with a man who'd signed the settlement that had silenced him for 3 years, trying not to let the irony show. Rachel was already there, files spread across the table. Kenneth Porter, the COO. Marcus vaguely remembered from his engineering days, nodded in recognition. Lisa Monroe from HR looked relieved to see him. Crawford gestured to a seat. Please, sit. We have a lot to cover. Marcus sat. Victoria took the chair beside him, a deliberate positioning that said, we're allies now. Rachel began, Marcus, show them what you have. Marcus pulled out his laptop, the old one that had survived 3 years of careful preservation. Opened the encrypted folder he'd been building since the day he signed Sarah's settlement. He connected to the room's display screen. Pulled up the first document, his original design specifications for Sterling's server infrastructure. Dated 4 years ago, stamped with his employee ID, signed digitally with his credentials. Next to it, he pulled up the patent application filed 6 months later. Same design, same specifications. Different author, Sterling Industries Finance Department under supervision of CFO Robert Thornton. Marcus's voice was steady. This is the core architecture running Sterling's operations today.
I designed it. Robert credited his finance team. He clicked through 7 more examples, each one showing Marcus's original work beside Robert's plagiarized version. Supply chain optimization, predictive maintenance algorithms, energy efficiency protocols, millions of dollars in value, all stolen. Crawford's face darkened with each slide. How did you preserve these? Marcus pulled up a code file. I embed signatures in everything I write.
Hidden in the logic where only another engineer would find them. Look at line 447. He highlighted a section of seemingly random code. Explained, this converts to hexadecimal. The hex values spell ELLA, my daughter's name. I hide it in every program. Lines 447, 891, 1305, 1888. 4 locations. Robert's team couldn't have known to remove them because they didn't write the code. Kenneth Porter leaned forward, studying the screen. That's brilliant. Marcus continued. Every patent Robert filed contains my signature. Every innovation his team supposedly created has Ella's name hidden in the architecture. I documented everything. Timestamps, email chains, design reviews where I presented these solutions. All of it archived. Rachel added her evidence to the display. Combined with what I've found, we have proof of $2.3 million in embezzlement, 8 cases of intellectual property theft, and Sarah Cole's wrongful death settlement showing consciousness of guilt. Crawford's voice was granite. Monday's board meeting. We present this. Robert is removed and arrested. Agreed. The room nodded, except Marcus. He spoke carefully. I need to understand something first. Chairman Crawford, you signed Sarah's settlement. You approved my demotion. Why? The question hung heavy. Crawford met Marcus's eyes. Because 3 years ago I made a mistake. Robert convinced me the settlement was generous, fair, standard protocol. I signed without investigating deeply enough. I'm asking you to believe I didn't know about the budget cuts that killed your wife. But that doesn't excuse my negligence. I should have looked closer. Should have protected you. I didn't. I'm sorry. Marcus absorbed this. And now? Crawford's expression was fierce. Now I'm fixing it. Robert Thornton will face criminal charges. You'll get the recognition you deserve, and Sterling will implement the reforms Victoria proposed. No more invisible employees, no more stolen credit. Ulan? Marcus looked at Victoria. You proposed reforms. She nodded. Transparent attribution system, flexible work policies, employee advocacy program, all implemented immediately. You'll help design them. Lisa Monroe spoke up. Marcus, I owe you an apology too. I processed those schedule change requests knowing they were necessary. I should have fought harder against Robert's interference. Marcus found himself surrounded by people who'd failed him now, trying to make amends. Part of him wanted to hold on to the anger nurse, the resentment, make them suffer the way he'd suffered. But Ella's voice echoed in his memory. We'll be okay, because we have each other. She'd taught him something about forgiveness, about moving forward instead of staying trapped in past pain. Marcus straightened in his chair. Okay, I'll testify, but I need something from all of you. Crawford nodded. Name it. Marcus's gaze swept the room. Monday in that boardroom, I'm going to be the only black person present. I'm going to accuse a powerful white executive of crimes. The optics are complicated. If this goes wrong, I'm the one who looks like the troublemaker, the disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. I need you all to be prepared to stand with me, publicly, regardless of how it affects your careers. Victoria spoke first. I'll introduce your testimony personally. Make it clear you have my full support. Crawford. And mine. Robert goes down, no matter what it costs politically. Kenneth. I'll provide corroboration on the budget cuts. My signature is on some of those approvals. I thought the equipment was safe because Robert said so. I'll testify to that. Lisa. I have 3 years of scheduled change requests and Robert's interference documented, all available for evidence. Rachel. And I have the legal framework to ensure this ends in prosecution, not just termination. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Not quite trust, but perhaps the beginning of it. These people had failed him, but they were trying, and trying mattered. He closed his laptop. Okay, we do this Monday, together. Crawford stood, offering his hand again. Thank you, Marcus, for giving us the chance to do the right thing. They shook. This time, Marcus felt the weight of alliance instead of settlement. The drive home happened in comfortable silence. Ella fell asleep in the back seat, clutching her butterfly book and a bag of cookies Margaret had sent home with her. Marcus carried her upstairs, the familiar weight of his daughter in his arms grounding him. This was real. This mattered. Everything else was just variables. He tucked her into bed without waking her, pulled her blanket up, checked the inhaler placement out of habit, sat on the edge of her bed watching her breathe the way he did every night. Tomorrow they would go to war. Tomorrow he would step into the light and accuse powerful people of terrible things. Tomorrow he would risk everything on the fragile hope that justice existed for people like him. But tonight, Ella was safe, sleeping peacefully, dreaming of butterflies and cookies and good people who kept their promises. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. Contract emailed. Ella's insurance guaranteed for 2 years regardless of outcome. Sleep well. Tomorrow we fight. He read it twice, then saved it to his evidence folder. Trust, but verify. Always verify. Marcus changed into his worn pajamas, lay down on the pull-out couch and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow would bring confrontation testimony and the terrifying possibility of public failure. But he'd made his choice. He'd chosen dignity over silence, truth over fear, his daughter's future over his own comfort. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Cole allowed himself to hope that maybe, just maybe, the invisible could become seen without being destroyed in the process. Sleep came slowly interrupted by thoughts of boardrooms and buried evidence and a 7-year-old girl who believed her father could be an engineer again. Someday, starting Monday, if courage held. Marcus's phone erupted at 12:47 a.m. Monday morning, dragging him from dreams of boardrooms and buried evidence. The screen showed Sterling Industries security. He answered with dread already pooling in his gut. The guard's voice came through, panicked. "Mr. Cole, I know you resigned, but the systems are failing. Critical cascade. It can't stop it. Please, sir, we need you." Marcus sat up, mind already racing through possibilities. How bad? The guard's breath was ragged. Everything. Order management, customer database, financial systems. It's like someone pulled the plug on the entire infrastructure. Someone had. Marcus knew exactly who. Robert Thornton destroying evidence before Monday's board meeting, making one last desperate play. He pulled on jeans, grabbed his laptop. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't let anyone touch anything." Hung up. Stood in the dark apartment trying to decide. He could ignore this call. Let Sterling burn. Robert would lose the evidence, but the company would collapse, taking 847 innocent employees with it. Or he could save them. Again. Number 49. His phone buzzed. Victoria. "Systems are crashing. Robert's sabotaging before the meeting. Can you stop it?" Marcus typed. "On my way. Meet me there." He checked on Ella, still sleeping, butterfly book clutched against her chest. Called Mrs. Washington, apologizing for the ungodly hour. She answered on the second ring, voice alert. "What's wrong, baby?" Marcus explained quickly. She cut him off. "Bring her over. Door's unlocked. I'll put her in the spare bed." Marcus carefully lifted Ella, still asleep, carried her down the hall. Mrs. Washington met him at her door in a bathrobe, took his daughter with practiced ease. Ella stirred slightly, mumbled something about monarchs, settled against Mrs. Washington's shoulder. Marcus kissed her forehead. "I'll be back before breakfast." Mrs. Washington's eyes held understanding. "You go save those people their jobs. We'll be fine." The drive to Sterling Industries took 14 minutes through empty Chicago streets. Victoria's Mercedes was already in the parking lot when Marcus arrived. She met him at the entrance, hair, pulled-back yoga pants and a sweatshirt replacing her usual armor. Looking human. Worried. She fell into step beside him. "What do you need?" Marcus headed for the server room. "Access to Robert's credentials, administrative override, and coffee. This is going to take hours." They rode the elevator in silence. Victoria glanced at him. "Thank you. For coming." Marcus kept his eyes forward. "I'm not doing this for you. 800 people work here. Security guards, janitors, administrative assistants, people who'd lose everything if this company fails." Victoria absorbed the distinction. "Still, thank you." The server room was chaos. Monitors flashing red. Alert klaxons silenced, but lights still screaming emergency. Marcus dropped into the primary terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard before his conscious mind fully engaged. Victoria stood behind him, watching code scroll past too fast for civilian comprehension. "What's happening?" Marcus's voice was distant, most of his attention on the problem. "Sophisticated attack, triggered remotely, designed to cascade through every system. Destroy data, corrupt backups, make it look like natural failure." He pulled up access logs, traced the digital signature, activated from Robert's credentials at 11:47 p.m. But the malware was planted months ago. He's been preparing this. Victoria leaned closer, reading over his shoulder. "Can you stop it?" Marcus's hands never stopped moving. "I designed these systems. Every backdoor, every emergency protocol. I can stop it. Question is, how much data we lose first." He rerouted power, isolated corrupted sectors, built digital walls around the spreading infection. The attack was elegant, professional. Robert had hired someone good. But Marcus had built this infrastructure, knew every line of code, every vulnerability, every secret entrance. 1:15 a.m. The cascade slowed. Marcus quarantined the worst damage-initiated recovery protocols from clean backups stored offsite. Sweat tracked down his temple despite the climate control. Victoria disappeared, returned with coffee from the executive break room. Set it beside him without comment. Marcus grabbed it, drank without tasting, kept working. 2:03 a.m. He found the kill switch. Elegant piece of coding hidden in a maintenance subroutine nobody ever checked.
Marcus disabled it, locked Robert out of the system, entirely changed every administrative password. 2:47 a.m. The last sector came back online. Marcus ran diagnostics, checked integrity, verified the backups. Some damage was permanent. Customer orders from the last 72 hours corrupted. Financial records from the previous quarter compromised. But the core systems survived. The company would limp, but not die. He leaned back, hands shaking from adrenaline and exhaustion. Done. We lost some data, but nothing catastrophic. The attack is contained. Victoria had been sitting on the floor beside him, back against the server rack. She stood, stretched, checked her watch. 4 hours. You just saved the company in 4 hours. Marcus closed his laptop. I just prevented Robert from destroying evidence. The saved company is a side effect. She studied his face. You could have let it burn. Could have walked away.
Why didn't you? The question deserved honesty. Because the people who'd suffer aren't the ones who deserve it. Robert walks away rich either way, but the receptionist who answers phones, the guy who guards the parking lot at night, they lose everything. I couldn't do that to them. Victoria's expression shifted. You're a better person than I am. Marcus stood gathering his things. I'm just a person who remembers what it feels like to be powerless, to have your life destroyed by someone else's decisions. I won't be the one who does that. They walked to the elevator together. Victoria pressed the button. Can I ask you something? Marcus waited. Her voice came out quieter than he'd heard before. When you look at me, what do you see? The question surprised him. Marcus considered lying, decided against it. I see someone who's terrified of being her mother, so terrified she became something worse. Someone with power who uses it to control instead of protect. Someone who could be better but doesn't know how. Victoria flinched but didn't look away. That's fair. The elevator arrived. They stepped inside. Marcus added, but I also see someone trying to change, someone who showed up at my apartment to apologize, who's risking her career to do the right thing, someone who's scared but doing it anyway. That counts for something. Victoria's eyes glistened. Does it count enough? Marcus met her gaze. Ask me again after today, after we see if justice actually wins. They exited into the lobby. Dawn was still hours away. Victoria pulled out her phone. I should go home. Get a few hours of sleep before the board meeting. Marcus checked his watch. I need to get back to Ella. She'll be waking up soon. Victoria hesitated. Marcus, at the meeting today, when you testify, I want you to know I'll be standing beside you, whatever happens. He studied her face, looking for the performance, finding only exhaustion and determination. Why does this matter so much to you? Victoria's answer came without hesitation. Because my mother was invisible too, worked herself to exhaustion for people who didn't see her, and when they finally noticed it was to fire her. She never recovered. I watched her fade into depression, into nothing. I became a CEO to prove I'd never be her, never be powerless. But somewhere along the way I became the person who made other people fade, who destroyed them without noticing. I can't undo what I did to you, but I can make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Marcus absorbed this. Your mother would be proud of who you're trying to become. Victoria's voice broke slightly. I hope so. They separated in the parking lot. Marcus drove through the pre-dawn darkness, thinking about mothers and daughters, about the legacies people left, about how broken people tried to fix themselves by fixing others. Mrs. Washington's door was unlocked as promised. He found Ella asleep in the spare bedroom, starfished across the bed. Marcus lifted her carefully, carried her home, tucked her back into her own bed. Checked the time. 4:47 a.m. 3 hours until he had to wake her for school. 2 hours until he had to be presentable for the most important meeting of his life. He lay down on the pull-out couch and closed his eyes. Sleep came in fragments, interrupted by thoughts of testimony and justice, and the fragile hope
that truth might actually matter. The Sterling Industries boardroom was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago, a table that could seat 20 currently occupied by 12, James Crawford at the head, board members arrayed like judges.
Robert Thornton, sitting confident, Diana Ashford beside him, both wearing the expressions of people who believed they'd already won. Marcus entered at 9:58 a.m. in his borrowed navy suit, the one the pastor had let him keep after the restaurant. Victoria walked beside him, professional, in a charcoal dress that whispered power. Rachel followed with her briefcase of evidence. Kenneth Porter and Lisa Monroe behind them, witnesses to corporate redemption. Robert's expression shifted when he saw Marcus. Surprise, then calculation, then the smooth mask of executive concern. Victoria, what is Mr. Cole doing here? He resigned. Victoria took her seat, gestured for Marcus to sit beside her. Mr. Cole is here at my invitation, as a key witness to matters this board needs to address. Crawford called the meeting to order. We're here to discuss allegations of financial misconduct, intellectual property theft, and deliberate sabotage. Ms. Whitmore, please present your findings.
Rachel stood, connected her laptop to the display screen. Pulled up the first piece of evidence Shell Consulting Companies registered to Robert's wife's maiden name. Her voice was clinical precise. Over 5 years, Robert Thornton embezzled $2.3 million through fraudulent consulting contracts. The companies don't exist. The services were never rendered. The money went to offshore accounts he controls. Robert's protest was immediate. This is outrageous. Those are legitimate business expenses. Crawford cut him off. You'll have your chance to respond. Let her finish. Rachel continued, methodical and devastating. Each slide another nail. Vendor contracts inflated by 30%, the excess kicked back to Robert. Maintenance budgets slashed to hit profit targets, the savings diverted to executive bonuses. Sarah Cole's death investigation showing Robert's budget cuts directly caused equipment failure. The board members' expressions shifted from skepticism to horror as the evidence mounted. Then Rachel pulled up the intellectual property theft. 8 engineers over 5 years. Marcus's work featured prominently, his code displayed beside Robert's plagiarized versions. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Cole, please explain what we're seeing. Marcus stood, every eye in the room locked on him, the only black man present, the maintenance worker accusing the CFO, the moment he'd been terrified of for 3 years. He forced his voice steady. 4 years ago, I designed Sterling's core infrastructure as senior infrastructure engineer. This system, he pointed to the screen, every critical protocol, every backup procedure, every efficiency improvement, I built it. Clicked to the next slide. 6 months later, Robert filed a patent crediting his finance team. Same design, same specifications, my work with someone else's name. Board member Harrison, a white-haired man who'd been with Sterling for decades, leaned forward. How do we know you're not just claiming credit after the fact? Marcus had expected this. Pulled up the code file. I embed signatures in everything I write. My daughter's name, Ella, hidden in hexadecimal at specific line numbers. Look at line 447. He highlighted the section showed the hex conversion spelling ELLA. Marcus continued. Lines 891, 1205, 1988, 2301. 5 locations in every program I write. Robert's team couldn't have known to remove them because they didn't write the code. I did. Kenneth Porter spoke up. I can confirm this. I approved the original project. Marcus presented these designs in engineering reviews. I watched him build this system. Robert finally found his voice smooth and reasonable. This is a disgruntled employee with a grudge. He was demoted for performance issues. Marcus turned to face him directly. I was demoted because you killed my wife. The room went silent. Marcus pulled up the settlement document. 3 years ago, Sarah Cole died at the Cicero facility. Hydraulic press malfunction. The investigation found the equipment had been flagged for maintenance. Work orders submitted, then cancelled because of budget cuts. Your budget cuts, Robert. You saved $340,000 in Q4 2021. It cost my wife her life. He showed the settlement. You paid me $500,000 to stay quiet, made me sign an NDA, then demoted me to maintenance to keep me powerless, to make sure I'd never have credibility to speak against you. Board member Harrison looked sick. Is this true? Crawford answered. I signed that settlement. At the time, I believed it was standard workplace accident protocol. I didn't investigate deeply enough. That's on me. But the facts are clear. Robert's budget cuts killed Sarah Cole. Then he bought Marcus's silence and buried him. Robert stood, his composure cracking. This is a setup. Cole is lying. Rachel interrupted. Then explain the system sabotage last night.
She pulled up access logs. At 11:47 p.m., Sunday, malware was activated from your credentials, designed to destroy financial records, patent documentation, email servers, everything connecting you to these crimes. Marcus Cole spent 4 hours stopping it, saving evidence you were trying to erase. Diana Ashford tried to interject. That could have been anyone using Robert's credentials. Rachel smiled coldly. Ms. Ashford, we also have evidence you helped orchestrate this. Emails between you and offshore accounts. Communication with the technical contractor who planted the malware. Your involvement goes back 18 months. Diana's face drained of color. Rachel continued. You weren't just helping Robert embezzle. You were planning a hostile takeover. Crash the stock price through sabotage. Acquire controlling shares cheap.
Assets stripped the company. Robert was supposed to take the fall while you walked away clean. Marcus watched this revelation land. Robert turning to Diana with betrayal in his eyes. Diana's mask finally cracking into something ugly. Diana's response was ice. Prove it! Rachel pulled up the emails, the money trails, the coordination timelines. Damning. Comprehensive. Inescapable. Crawford stood. I've heard enough. Board members, we need to vote. All in favor of immediately suspending Robert Thornton and Diana Ashford, pending criminal investigation. The vote was unanimous. Crawford nodded to the door. 2 Chicago PD detectives entered, badges displayed. They'd been waiting in the conference room next door, listening to everything. The lead detective approached Robert and Diana. Robert Thornton, Diana Ashford, you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and corporate sabotage. You have the right to remain silent. Robert's face went purple. This is illegal. You can't just... The detective cuffed him. We have enough probable cause to arrest and enough evidence to prosecute. Your lawyers can argue the rest. As they led Robert past Marcus, he hissed, You're nobody. You'll always be nobody. Marcus's response was quiet. Certain, I'm Ella Cole's father. That makes me somebody. The room erupted in applause. Board members standing clapping for Marcus, for justice, for courage. Marcus stood motionless, absorbing it. 3 years silent. 3 years powerless. And now, in one morning, everything had changed. Victoria stood beside him, tears running down her face, clapping harder than anyone. When the applause faded, Crawford addressed the room. Marcus Cole, on behalf of this board and this company, I apologize. For the settlement, for the demotion, for 3 years of failing to see your value. You deserve better. Sterling Industries deserves better. He pulled out a document. Effective immediately, I'd like to offer you the position of Chief Technology Officer. Full executive compensation, full benefits, full authority to rebuild our technical division the right way. Marcus looked at the contract, then at Victoria, then at the board members watching him with respect instead of dismissal. His voice came out steady. I accept, on the condition that we implement immediate reforms, transparent attribution for all innovations, flexible work policies for parents and caregivers, employee advocacy with real teeth, and a scholarship fund in Sarah Cole's name for children who've lost parents to workplace negligence. Crawford extended his hand. Done. All of it. Welcome to the executive team, Mr. Cole. They shook. The room applauded again. Marcus felt something shift inside him. Not quite healing, but perhaps the beginning of it. Victoria approached as the board members dispersed. You did it. Marcus met her eyes. We did it. I couldn't have done this alone. Her smile was tentative. What happens now? Marcus thought of Ella, probably in math class solving problems, believing her father was at a very important meeting. Now I go pick up my daughter from school. At 3:30, like I promised. Victoria's expression softened. As CTO, you can set your own schedule. Marcus nodded. Then my schedule includes daily pickup at 3:30, non-negotiable. Victoria held out her hand. Welcome to Sterling Industries, Mr. Cole. For real this time. He shook it. Equals. Finally. 6 months transformed Sterling Industries in ways that couldn't be measured in quarterly reports. Marcus stood backstage at the company's annual gala, adjusting his bow tie for the 3rd time, trying to remember the speech he'd rehearsed a dozen times and would probably forget the moment he reached the podium. The past half year had been a whirlwind, restructuring the technical division, implementing transparent attribution systems, creating flexible work policies that treated parents like professionals instead of problems, establishing the Sarah Cole Memorial Scholarship, which had already awarded $50,000 to 5 children who'd lost parents to workplace accidents. Marcus had attended Ella's school play in May, watching her transform into a butterfly on stage, her voice clear and confident.
Victoria had been there too, sitting beside him in the back row, both of them having slipped in late from a budget meeting that ran long. They'd started having dinner together, not dates exactly. More like three people learning to be a unit. Victoria and Ella and Marcus at Lou's Diner on Saturday mornings. Victoria learning about butterfly migration and 7-year-old wisdom. Ella teaching Victoria how to see people instead of just looking at them. The relationship between Marcus and Victoria had developed slowly, carefully, like two people who'd both been burned learning to trust fire again. They worked together daily, professional and respectful. They spent time together with Ella building foundation instead of rushing to romance. They talked late at night after Ella was asleep about mothers and fathers and the weight of trying to be better than your worst instincts. They hadn't kissed yet, hadn't declared anything official. But something was growing there, something that felt more real than any relationship Marcus had imagined possible after Sarah. Victoria found him pacing. "You're going to be great." Marcus's response was dry. "I design systems. I don't do public speaking." She straightened his bow tie unnecessarily. "You testified in front of the board, sent 2 criminals to prison. You can handle a speech." Marcus looked at her, really looked. 6 months of watching her change. 6 months of seeing her show up consistently for him and for Ella. 6 months of wondering if trust was possible again. His name was called. Marcus walked onto the stage facing a ballroom full of Sterling's employees, board members and partners. Hundreds of people, all watching him, all knowing his name. He spoke about Sarah, about the scholarship established in her memory, about workplace safety reforms implemented across all Sterling facilities, about making sure no child lost a parent to preventable negligence. Then he shifted to the topic that mattered most. 6 months ago, I stood in a different kind of room, a boardroom, testifying about crimes committed by people who thought I didn't matter, who thought I was nobody, who thought being powerless meant being worthless. His eyes found Victoria in the front row, Ella beside her in a dress that made her look older than 7. Marcus continued, "But I want to talk about something more important than corporate crime. I want to talk about recognition, about seeing people, really seeing them. For 3 years I worked at Sterling Industries without a name, without acknowledgement, without mattering to the people who had power, not because I was doing bad work, but because the people looking never bothered to see." He paused, letting the words settle. "So tonight, I want every person in this room to make a choice. Look around, find someone you don't know, learn their name, ask them what they do, what they care about, what matters to them. Because the person who cleans your office might have brilliant ideas you'll never hear if you don't ask. The security guard might be writing a novel. The receptionist might solve your biggest problem if you give them the chance. Being powerless doesn't mean being worthless. It just means the people with power aren't paying attention." The applause was thunderous. Marcus stepped off stage, found Victoria waiting with tears in her eyes. She didn't say anything, just took his hand, squeezed once, let go. But the gesture said everything. Later that night, Marcus drove Victoria and Ella to Lou's Diner. Their tradition, their family place. The booth in the back that Jenny always kept free for them. Ella chattered about the gala, about the fancy dresses, about the ice sculpture shaped like a butterfly that she'd made Jenny promise to tell her if they ever got one at the diner. Victoria listened with genuine interest, asking questions, treating Ella's excitement like it mattered. Because it did. Because Ella mattered. Because somewhere in the past 6 months Victoria had learned that power wasn't about control. It was about care. Jenny brought their regular orders without asking, "Heard your speech made the news, Marcus. Proud of you." Marcus felt warmth spread through his chest. Community. Recognition. The opposite of invisibility. After dinner, they drove back to Marcus's apartment. Ella fell asleep in the back seat, full of pancakes and excitement. Marcus carried her upstairs, Victoria following quietly. He tucked Ella in, checked her inhaler out of habit, kissed her forehead. Whispered the promise he made every night. "I'm here. I'll always be here." When he emerged, Victoria was standing in the living room looking at the photos on his refrigerator, pictures of Ella at various ages, one photo of Sarah from before everything, Marcus and Sarah and baby Ella all smiling all together, all unaware that tragedy was coming. Victoria turned to face him, her expression vulnerable. "Can I ask you something? And I need you to be honest." Marcus waited. Her voice was uncertain. "Is there room in your life for me, not as your boss, not as someone trying to make amends, but as someone who cares about you, about Ella, someone who wants to be part of this?" The question hung between them. Marcus thought about 6 months of watching Victoria change. 6 months of seeing her show up for Ella's school events, learn about butterflies, sit in diners without complaint. 6 months of slow trust building. He thought about Sarah. About the promise he'd made at her grave to keep Ella safe and happy. About whether letting someone new in honored that promise or betrayed it. But mostly, he thought about Ella. About her laughter when Victoria tried to braid her hair and failed. About her whispered comment last week. "Daddy, I think Miss Victoria makes you happy." "That's good. You should be happy." His answer came slowly, carefully. "Yes. There's room. If you understand that Ella comes first. Always. If you're ready for that." Victoria's smile was soft, genuine. "I wouldn't have it any other way." Marcus stepped closer, not rushing, just closing the distance. "I'm not saying this is easy, or simple. We're both carrying damage, both learning how to trust again, both figuring out who we are after everything that's happened." Victoria reached up, touched his face gently. "I know, but I'm willing to figure it out. If you are." Marcus covered her hand with his. "I care about you. A lot. And that terrifies me. Because caring means risking, and I've already lost so much." Her voice was steady. "I can't promise I'll never hurt you. I can't promise I won't make mistakes. But I can promise I'll try, every day, to be worthy of you, of Ella, of this." Marcus pulled her close, rested his forehead against hers. "That's all anyone can promise. To try." The kiss, when it happened, was gentle, careful, full of promise instead of demand. A beginning, not a culmination. When they pulled apart, Victoria whispered, "I should go. Let you get some rest." But Ella's voice came from her bedroom doorway. "You don't have to go." They both turned. Ella stood there in her butterfly pajamas, rubbing her eyes, clearly having been awake for the whole conversation. Marcus started to speak, but Ella walked over to Victoria, looked up at her seriously. "Do you love my daddy?" Victoria knelt to Ella's eye level, meeting those wise 7-year-old eyes. "I'm starting to. Is that okay with you?" Ella considered this with her characteristic seriousness. "Do you promise not to leave like Mummy did?" Victoria's voice was gentle. "Your Mummy didn't choose to leave, sweetheart. Sometimes bad things happen that nobody can control. But I can promise that I won't leave on purpose, that I'll try my hardest to stay, that I care about you and your daddy very much." Ella studied her face, looking for the lie, not finding one. "Okay. You can stay for breakfast. We have pancakes on Sunday mornings." Victoria glanced at Marcus, questioning. He nodded. Ella took Victoria's hand. "Come on. I'll show you where Daddy keeps the extra blankets for the couch." Marcus watched his daughter lead Victoria to the linen closet, explaining which blankets were the warmest and which pillows were the softest. Watched Victoria listen with complete attention, like Ella's preferences mattered more than quarterly reports. Later, after Ella was back in bed this time, genuinely asleep, Marcus and Victoria sat together on the pull-out couch. Not touching, just sitting close, being present. Victoria spoke quietly. "Your daughter is amazing." Marcus's voice held pride. "She is. She's been through so much, but she's still open, still trusting, still believing good things are possible." Victoria turned to look at him. "She gets that from you, the believing." Marcus met her gaze. "I didn't believe. Not for a long time. I survived. But I didn't believe things could actually get better. Ella taught me that. She never stopped having faith." They sat in comfortable silence, the city lights filtering through the windows, casting soft shadows across the small apartment. Marcus thought about 3 years ago. Sarah's funeral, the settlement, the demotion, the slow descent into invisibility. He'd thought that was his ending. Thought he'd spend the rest of his life invisible, powerless, surviving but not living. But Ella had been right. Caterpillars had to work hard to become butterflies. Metamorphosis wasn't easy. It required breaking down completely before building something new. Marcus had broken, had been crushed under the weight of grief and injustice and systematic dismissal. But somehow he'd started rebuilding, found allies, fought back, became visible again. And now sitting here with Victoria sleeping on his couch and Ella safe in her bed, Marcus understood what his daughter had known all along. Home wasn't a place. Home was the people who saw you, really saw you, who knew your name and your story and chose to stay anyway. He checked on Ella one more time before settling onto the other end of the couch. She was sleeping peacefully, her butterfly book on the nightstand, her inhaler close by her face, relaxed and happy. Marcus pulled a blanket over himself and closed his eyes. Tomorrow, they'd have pancakes. Victoria would probably burn them because she'd admitted she couldn't cook. Ella would laugh and show her the right way. They'd be loud and messy and imperfect. They'd be family. Not the family he'd planned, not the family he'd lost, but the family that was possible. The family being built from courage and truth and the radical act of really seeing each other. Marcus fell asleep with hope settling in his chest like light. Justice had been served. Truth had won. The invisible had become seen. And tomorrow he'd wake up to a daughter who believed in butterflies and a woman who was learning to believe in second chances. Tomorrow Marcus Cole would continue being somebody. Not because of his title or his testimony or his triumph over corruption, but because the people who mattered knew his name, saw his heart, chose to stay. That was enough. More than enough. Everything.